Hello, BookTube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. I thought I'd do a little March Mystery Madness video, and I want to ask people what your favourite literary detective is, because I'm dipping into lots of different ones at the moment. I'm sort of one or two books through a lot of different ones, so I want to find out what people's favourites are, maybe lesser known ones, and I'm going to go through some of my favourites as well. I'll start with the obvious three. Miss Marple. So I think I've read three Miss Marples now, and this was my favourite one so far. 450 from Paddington, which I read sort of last week or the week before, I can't remember. If you don't know Miss Marple, she's not a traditional detective in any way, because she's an old lady and she's not employed by the police in any official capacity. She's basically a village gossip. So she's an old lady, but she's sort of whip smart and often helps the police out. Her village is sort of constantly full of murders, so she's always around to help. Yeah, she's an odd one in that she doesn't always play a major part in the novel. She's sort of in the background quite a lot. Obviously, because she's so old, she's not on the streets doing the investigation normally. So, very sort of interesting character. I've never watched any of the Miss Marple TV adaptations, so let me know if they're good. There's like about 3 or 4 different Miss Marples. The second one, Hercule Poirot, again Agatha Christie. He is a much more sort of quirky character, and again, not always where he's sort of more officially employed by the police, but he's not a policeman, police constable. He's more of an expert that they bring in to help, and he's a very strange little character, brilliantly played by David Suchet in the TV series. Not so into the Kenneth Branagh one, but the films are okay. He's a little Belgian man with a round head and a sort of very pristine mustache. He's often talks about the little grey cells, as in brain matter. Again, he's whip smart, but he's much more involved in the investigations generally, and it's a bit element of Columbo, where he's often quite annoying to the people who have done the crime. But yeah, those are the two famous Agatha Christie ones. For Hercule Poirot, my favourite book of his that I've read is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I haven't read Murder on the Orient Express because I've watched too many films of it, but I will read it eventually. What's the actor who plays him in the old film? I forget his name, but I like that one as Hercule Poirot as well. Albert Finney. He's really good as Hercule Poirot as well. Yeah, then we'll go on to perhaps the most obvious detective of them all, Sherlock Holmes. He is, I think everyone knows who Sherlock Holmes is, but I forgot to wear my deerstalker. I normally do a deerstalker hat when I'm making a March Mystery Madness video, but yeah, I don't think he actually wears a deerstalker in the books. It's one of those things like, what's the saying? The saying he also doesn't say. Elementary, my dear Watson. He doesn't actually say that at any point. He is, again, a genius. Perhaps more unpleasant sort of man than Poirot and Miss Marple, because he's solely focused on the art of solving crime. So to the point where he will not fill up his brain space, which I don't think is a real thing, with anything else. He, like, for example, he doesn't know that the Earth goes around the sun. He only knows stuff that can help him solve crimes. He's addicted to cocaine. He plays violin as well. He often doesn't go out on the street himself. He has like a bunch of street urchins that help him with like a network. But when he does, he's very capable physically, because he was a boxing champion or something when he was younger. The Holmes books are perhaps the cleverest mysteries that I've read. They're often elaborate solutions, but I love every single Sherlock Holmes story. I've read all of them multiple times. I would advise a starting place, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, but you can kind of dip in anywhere. Hound of the Baskervilles is another good one to start with if you want a full novel, but I really like the short stories in this one. He's also got the great Dr. Watson, who's another great character, as his sort of sidekick. But yeah, a very unusual man, and kind of the template that everyone bases their detectives off in some way. Next, we're going to go with a lesser known one, and that is one I've learnt from BookTube, because Book Olive and Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading were both reading this person, so I started reading. That's Emery Ames, who is a detective written by Ashley Weaver, and these are quite modern. Emery Ames, again, is not an official. In fact, she's very unofficial. She's the police are often telling her not to get involved in the crimes because she's often in trouble. She's sort of a wealthy young socialite who is from a very privileged background. It's not set in the 1930s, so quite glittery, glamorous 20s and 30s, I think it is. She's married to a famous sort of playboy called Milo, who's always in the newspapers and always getting in trouble. But although there's always rumours around him, he is actually very dedicated to Amory, and they have a great sort of witty banter relationship. She, again, like Miss Marple, just often seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time, I guess. And she's very smart, and when there's a murder that's happened around her, she will get involved and try and solve it. Very, very witty, and kind of like a young Miss Marple. You could call her a young Miss Marple, basically. I would start with the first book, which is Murder at the Brightwell, which is really good. Next, I'm going to go on to Lord Peter Wimsey. He is another kind of aristocratic character, and again, he's an amateur. He's kind of like Sherlock Holmes in that he's quite dedicated to it, though. So he doesn't really have a job. He's a wealthy, aristocrat, and he just gets involved in crime as a hobby. So he will see things in the paper and get involved. He was in, this is post, I think it's in between the wars, this one. He has shell shock from World War One still. But he's got a great mind. He's got great observation. He's often a very silly character. And there's other characters in the series that come in and out. Harriet Vane is a great one, and the novel I would actually most recommend from Lord Peter Wimsey, the author's Dorothy L. Sayers, by the way, that is Gaudy Night, which is one that actually Pete Wimsey's not in very much. He's very much a side character, and Harriet Vane's the main character. But if you want to try one with Lord Peter Wimsey much more at the forefront, I would try Strong Poison, which is really good as well. But yeah, I've got a lot more Lord Peter Wimsey left to read, so he's reasonably new to me. Next, we'll go with another one that's quite reasonably new to me, and that is P.D. James's detective Adam Dalgliesh, and he is an official police detective. He's a very weird one. I've only read the first 2 books of this series, and you don't get a great deal of information about him. He's sort of drip fed to you, and this kind of matches his personality because he's a very reserved and private person. He's again upper class, but dealing with sort of general working class crimes more than the other ones that all tend to be aristocratic crimes. He's like in villages and things. He's a poet in his spare time, so that's another sort of strange element to his character. But yeah, he's Scotland Yard. He's very private and reserved and methodical. But I've the first 2 P.D. James books I've really enjoyed. So I really want to carry on with his. The weird thing I find about P.D. James is everyone tends to read that Pride and Prejudice novel she wrote, that was the last novel she wrote, and is apparently terrible. And I think that puts people off P.D. James when actually she's really good. And she also did Children of Men, which is a great film, but I don't think the book is as good as the film from what I've heard. I've not read it, but again, that might put people off her. But you should try detective fiction if you haven't. Again, this is another one that I'm quite new to. 2 books into Ellis Peters' brother Cadfael. He is a monk in medieval England. He lives in Shrewsbury. He was a crusader, I think in the First Crusade. I can't be certain, I think so. He's an interesting character because the rest of the monks are not very worldly, whereas he is late to the monk profession, calling, or whatever, and he's much more worldly, and because he's been in the Crusades, he's fought, and he's sort of a stocky, powerful man. Also, there was a TV series of this in England that was just very famous as well, but I haven't seen it. But yeah, he's doing monkish mysteries. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about him. Like I say, I'm only 2 into him. He's really interesting character as well, and he's often helping out the younger monklings. But yeah, very good so far. And another one I'm very new to, Inspector Wexford. I've only read the first book in this series, although I have bought the second one, and I'm going to read it soon. Wexford is a bit different to some of the others in that he is, again, an official detective. He's a chief inspector, though, in Sussex, and he's a lot older and experienced. And again, you don't get too much Wexford in this first one, so I'm interested to learn more about him. But he's a very sort of down-to-earth, intelligent guy who seems to be calmer. And in the first book, he's more sending out his what would be the word? I guess normal policemen or whatever. Detectives. He's the detective inspector, so he sits back a bit and gives advice. But yeah, he's not an aristocrat in any way. He's much more working class background, and he's a sort of family man, down to earth, and less maybe of an of a strange character. He's much more of a normal person. So I'm interested to read more of these. I really enjoyed the first one. The one I've just started today is Inspector Linley. So we'll see how Linley goes. The first 5 pages were very well written. So if Linley's one of your favourite, let me know. And I guess another type of detective would be the more American ones. I guess all of mine are English, or British at least. Do you much prefer sort of the hard-boiled detective of Raymond Chandler? What's his name? Philip Marlowe. I read this one and really enjoyed it. I prefer the film, maybe. The film's brilliant. Bogey and what's her name? No, it's gone out of my head, but I love this cover as well. It's like one of the old green penguins. But yeah, do you prefer the American detectives? Let me know who your favourite detective is, and if you enjoy these ones. Have a good one, BookTube.